3:17 a.m. on November 7, 1986, a radio station in a small Ohio town broadcast a list of names, one by one, and then went dead silent. Every single person on that list was dead within 24 hours. But that's not the terrifying part. The terrifying part is what the station manager, a man named Frank, saw and smelled when he rushed into the control room. The air was thick with the sharp, metallic tang of ozone, like the moment after a lightning strike. And on the microphone, where the announcer's lips should have been, was a single, perfect handprint. It was cold to the touch and sticky, as if coated in drying sap. The announcer was gone, the list was complete, and the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was listening. For 6 minutes, the transmitter had been live, broadcasting static into the silent night. Come morning, the station manager discovered the equipment still powered on, its console humming, but the broadcast booth stood completely vacant. The station logbook, when checked, held no record of any broadcast scheduled for that hour, and the first name listed for that phantom transmission was my own. In '86, I was a 19-year-old college dropout named David, living in my parents' basement in Millbrook, Ohio. My world was capacitors, soldering irons, and the crackle of distant voices on old radios. The air in that basement always carried the scent of ozone and warm solder. It was a sanctuary of static and circuitry, until the whispers began. I was a DXer, a hunter of distant radio signals from across the globe. Sarah, my best friend, found my obsession charmingly eccentric. Mike, my buddy, just figured it was my way of dodging a proper job. Visual. The three of us laughing, sharing a pizza in the dim, cluttered basement, surrounded by my radio equipment. That night we followed our usual ritual. Sarah buried in textbooks, Mike lamenting his girlfriend, while I slowly turned the dial through the static, hunting for spectral stations. The air hung thick with the scent of old paper and sharp ozone, a familiar metallic tang from the humming equipment. Then, WZMB 88.7, the Millbrook Whisper, which always played soft rock after midnight, fell into absolute quiet. Not just dead air, a vacuum where sound should have been, swallowing even the background hum. Not static, a profound, hollow silence swallowed the room. A faint, acrid scent of ozone and scorched plastic hung in the cold, damp air. Then, a voice, flat and heavy with finality, cut through the void. Mike, great, you broke it. Then, a voice shattered the static. It wasn't Chuck's familiar baritone. This voice was flat, metallic, like a machine aping human speech without grasping its soul. A chilling, synthesized tone devoid of inflection filled the air, carrying a single, sterile word. Broadcast voice. Initializing. David Allen Riggs entered the house first, the scent of damp earth and something metallic clinging to the air. Sarah Elizabeth Vance followed, her fingers brushing a sticky residue on the wall as a low, rhythmic scratching echoed from the floor above. Michael Robert Tolliver was the last to cross the threshold, the sudden, heavy silence that fell, feeling like a physical weight. Then, a whisper, too close, brushed past his ear, carrying the faint, sweet odor of decay. Cynthia May Fairchild. James. We froze. My name. Then Sarah's. Then Mike's. We stared at the speaker as it recited 7 names we didn't know, then circled back to ours again. The signal was painfully clear. Local. This was coming from the transmitter tower just 3 miles away. Sarah. Turn it off, David. Narrator. But I couldn't. Unplugging it felt like giving the terror a tangible form. The air grew thick, with the scent of ozone and stale dread. Then, at 3:23 a.m., it simply stopped. The soft rock returned as if nothing had occurred. Our laughter was brittle, edged with tension. A prank, we told ourselves. It had to be. Chuck the DJ was clearly intoxicated. We pushed the memory aside. 2 days later, the first headline broke. Local man, James Pearson, found deceased. Then another. Tragic accident claims Cynthia Fairchild. Mike's call came immediately after, his voice strained and tight. David, the paper, James Pearson. I found the obituary. James Pearson, 34, died of an apparent heart attack on the morning of November 8th. The 4th name on that list was a coincidence, but a horrible, 1,000,000-to-1 coincidence. Then, the following week, Cynthia Fairchild was dead. A single-car accident on the lonely asphalt of Route 17. The air after carried the scent of ozone and wet pavement, a cold finality that settled deep in the bones. The 5th name, a greasy, cold dread congealed in my stomach. The air in the room grew heavy with the scent of old paper and something metallic. Each scratch of the pen felt like a verdict being sealed. Sarah refused to believe it. Mike was already packing a bag, mumbling about visiting his cousin in Florida. A sick obsession took root. I dialed WZMB. Chuck, the night DJ, swore on air he was at a diner the whole hour. He even had a time-stamped receipt. The proof was airtight. The station manager threatened police if I contacted them again, so I began monitoring 88.7 every night, alone with the static in the dark. The damp chill of the basement seeped into my bones, and the air smelled faintly of ozone and decay. Each scratch of the tape recorder's reels felt like a countdown to something I couldn't name. The silence returned, not an empty void, but a watchful, listening quiet.
Then, one night, beneath the constant hiss of static, I caught another sound. It was faint but distinct, a rhythmic pulse, like a slow, deliberate heartbeat. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone and damp earth, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The sound wasn't like a record needle anymore. It was bone on dry wall, relentless and close.
A filtered, distant voice cut through the static. Soon, David. The air in the room grew thick with the scent of ozone and something older, like wet earth and rust. I recoiled from the receiver as if burned, my own name echoing back from the static-filled void. Then the other phenomenon began. At night, the sharp metallic scent of ozone would saturate my bedroom air. My radio would snap on at 3:17 a.m., emitting only a profound, vacant static. Sarah witnessed a figure, just a deeper shadow within the darkness, standing motionless beside my transmitter. The room fell still when she flicked the switch. The sixth name, Arthur Bell, was found dead in his bed, his final breath taken in sleep. Outside, a storm gathered as David, frantic, spread maps of the woods across his desk, his fingers tracing the path to the radio tower. The air carried the scent of damp earth and ozone. Heavy silence broken only by the distant rumble of the scratch of his pen. Only 3 names remained on that list. Mine, Sarah's, and Mike's. Mike had vanished somewhere in Florida, his phone dead to our calls. Sarah was staying with me, too terrified to face the encroaching darkness alone. The anniversary of the broadcast was drawing near, a date marked by a cold, metallic dread, November 7th. The only way to break it was to go to the source, the WZMB transmission tower. Deep in the black pine woods, David and Sarah pressed forward, their flashlight beams carving weak tunnels through the oppressive, damp fog. The air tasted of wet earth and ozone, and every snapped twig underfoot sounded like a gunshot in the suffocating quiet. The air crackled with static electricity, thick with the scent of ozone and damp earth. The woods lay in an unnatural hush. No crickets chirped, no wind whispered through the branches, only the crunch of our footsteps and the heavy thud of our hearts broke the oppressive quiet. Then the tower emerged from the fog, a skeletal giant watching with empty eyes, and at its base we found it, an ancient, rusted utility shed, its door hanging open like an invitation. Inside wasn't a modern relay station. It was a time capsule, perfectly preserved from 1986, untouched and waiting. In the dim glow of the console's single remaining bulb, a dusty microphone stood sentinel over a neatly typed log sheet. The entry for November 7, 1986 read, 3:17 a.m. to 3:23 a.m. Special broadcast. List recitation. It was signed with a single, shaky initial. C. A sudden, metallic scent of ozone and dust filled the stale air. Then, from the darkness beyond the console, Sarah's voice emerged, trembling, barely more than a whisper, yet it cut through the heavy silence. It was a single word, laced with a recognition that felt more like a plea than a question. Her breath hitched, the sound audible in the dead space. Chuck? The word hung in the cold, damp air, unanswered, but he wasn't there. Then the console lights flickered to life on their own. The VU meter needle jumped violently, scratching against its limit. From a small, grimy speaker above, a flat, metallic voice began to speak. Sarah Elizabeth Vance's flashlight flickered, then died, plunging her into absolute blackness. A sharp gasp escaped her lips as the damp, earthy smell of the tunnel filled her lungs. The oppressive silence was broken only by the faint, rhythmic dripping of water from somewhere unseen. Her fingers brushed against the cold, slimy wall, a primal dread coiling in her stomach. David swung his flashlight toward Sarah, but the beam failed to reach her face. Instead, it caught the dark, humanoid silhouette standing directly behind her, one hand lifting toward her shoulder. My voice tore from my throat. "Sarah!" As I lunged forward and yanked her back. My flashlight struck the thing with a dull thud. It offered no resistance. It wasn't solid. A scent like ozone and damp earth filled the air, and the only sound was the frantic rasp of our own breathing. It appeared as a smear of static, a man-shaped void in reality, humming with the sound of dead air. The air grew heavy with the scent of ozone and a subtle, sickly sweetness. A primal dread took hold, freezing my thoughts. In that instant, I understood this wasn't a prediction. It was a claim. The broadcast wasn't reporting the deaths. It was authorizing them. The entity, the signal, whatever it was, needed each name spoken into the world from this place to make its claim valid. The air grew heavy with the metallic scent of old electronics and something else. Something faintly organic, like damp earth. A primal dread took hold as he grabbed the log sheet and the microphone. I didn't think. My thumb slammed the console's cracked transmit button, and I screamed into the mic, my own terror echoing back through the shed's tinny speaker. The air grew thick with the smell of hot electronics and something else, a sharp, coppery tang that caught in my throat. I choked out the words, my voice raw against the static. "David Allen Riggs, I revoke it. Do you hear me?" The plea hung in the damp, heavy air, met only by the low hum of the machine and a distant, rhythmic scratching from the walls. The air crackled with ozone as I screamed those 3 words. A wave of deafening feedback and static erupted, the sudden pressure making my ears ache. Every light in the room blew out with a sharp pop, plunging us into a thick, chemical-smelling darkness. The static man shattered into a million points of cold, blue light and vanished, leaving only the scent of burnt plastic and an immense, hollow silence. And just like that, we're back. Present day. David, now in his 50s, sits in a modern yet cozy home studio, exhaustion etched into his features, but a strange calm in his eyes. He clutches an old, water-stained log sheet, its paper brittle with age. The air in the room feels thick, carrying the faint scent of old paper and distant rain. We ran from those woods and never looked back. Sarah was okay. The shared trauma, that heavy secret, drove us apart. Mike stayed in Florida. He's fine now. But that entity, the static man, it never came from me. I broke the ritual by reclaiming my name on the same frequency, from the same source, and confused the signal. I created a paradox in its horrible logic. But here's what I never told anyone. I kept the log sheet, the only proof that any of it was real. And sometimes, late at night, the radio in my study, it powers on by itself, not to a station, not to static, but to that deep, hollow silence that swallows all sound. A cold, metallic scent fills the air, and the quiet becomes a weight pressing against my skin. And if I strain my ears in the absolute stillness, at the very boundary of that quiet, I can detect a faint, rhythmic scratching. Sometimes, just sometimes, a new name is whispered, one I don't recognize. The scent of ozone and old dust hangs thick in the air, cold and metallic against the skin. It's still broadcasting. It has simply migrated to a new roster of victims. So if you're ever tuning through the static in the deepest hours of the night, and you encounter a void of sound so profound it feels physical, if you hear a cold, synthesized voice start to form words from the emptiness, that is your one signal. Kill the power, destroy the device, flee. Initializing. The broadcast cuts out.
For 3 seconds, there is nothing but a dense, smothering quiet. The air in the room grows thick with the metallic scent of ozone and the faint, cold dampness of a tomb.
If the veil stirred, subscribe and meet the next encounter.